Hello everyone, and welcome back. For this lecture, we will cover topic 3. You've reached this video because you followed the link that was provided in your course notes. If you haven't already, please make sure to download the course notes to your device of choice. Now let's deal with topic 3, distinguishing between part 3 buildings and part 9 buildings. So, first things first. We want to distinguish whether or not we are working with a part 3 or a part 9 building. The reason this is important is because, as you now know by having assembled your building code, in volume 1, part 3 in division B of the building code is rather large. And so is part 9. So knowing whether or not the building you're working on as a professional or for this building code course falls under part 3 or part 9 makes a big difference, because it can make a big difference in what part of the building code applies to it, right? If it's a part 3 building, everything under part 3 applies to it. If it's a part 9 building, everything under part 9 applies to it. Okay, so we have to figure out first, I would say, what is the definition of a part 9 building? How can we identify a part 9 building? Well, like we learned in topic 2, definitions in the building code can be found in Division A, Part 1. Specifically, as you can see here on the screen, sentence 1.1.2.4.1. For a building to be governed by Part 9 of Division B of the building code, the following 3 conditions must be satisfied. The first one is that the building under consideration must be no more than 3 stories in height. Another way to say that for the word story is floors. No more than 3 floors in height. Okay, but the story is the correct technical definition. 2, the building must be no more than 600 square meters in building area. 3, the building under consideration must only be C, D, E, F2, or F3 occupancy. And we learned about occupancies in topic 2. All 3 of these conditions must be satisfied for a building to be considered part 9. If even one of them is not satisfied, the building under consideration is not part 9 and therefore part 3. You can now do the homework 1 that's available for you on Brightspace, question 3. We're also going to spend a little bit more of this topic discussing the definition of building area, because it's not obvious actually how building area works, and we'll see that in a moment. But before we get to that, I want to dive a little bit more into the definition of a Part 9 building. As you can see, there are 4 parts to the definition of a Part 9 building, or Part 3 for that matter. First, the part. Is this building going to be a Part 9 or a Part 3, right? How do we figure that out? Well, the other ones are the number of stories, then building area, and then occupancy. In order to figure out the first item, whether it's Part 3 or Part 9, you need the other 3, okay? So out of the 4 items, to figure out one of them, you're required to have the other 3. And that's true also for other things. So we can have some other thing that's unknown. So in this case, we could have the occupancy that's unknown. We can figure it out as long as all the other items are provided to you. I guess what I'm trying to get at is this. Out of these 4 points, you need to have at least 3 of them to figure out the 4th, regardless of which 3 we're talking about, okay? So you could be given the part, the number of stories in the building area, and then be asked to figure out the occupancy, okay? Terrific. Anyways, do a bit of practice with this. It's homework 1, question 3, and you can find that on Brightspace, okay? Now let's move on to the definition of building area. Where do we find the definition for building area? Well, if you remember from topic 2, and if you don't, go check it out. It's found in Division 1, Part A. Division A, Part 1. Okay, specifically in this case, it's under Article 1.4.1.2. In Topic 2, I explain exactly how to find it. This and any other definition. I'll read it out loud, and then we'll discuss it. Building area means the greatest horizontal area of a building above grade within the outside surface of the exterior walls, or within the outside surface of the exterior walls and the center line of a firewall. So that's a bit of a mouthful, right? So that's why I wanted to chat a little bit about it. Okay. So look at this sketch that's provided for you in your course notes. You can see right here, we have a building that's kind of odd, right? It's a 3-story building where the stories don't align, right? So you can see the second story here, this outside wall goes past the wall of the first story. And the third story too doesn't align. So what the definition says is you have to look at the outside walls everywhere. So for the purposes of the outside walls, this one here is the outside wall because it's the outermost one. And this one here is the outside wall on this side because it's the outermost one. Similarly, when we have a firewall, like this one here, that divides a building into 2 or more parts, it goes from the firewall to the outermost wall. In this case, it's on the first story. Okay, so you always look at the outside most walls of a building in more detail. Okay, let's look at this. Do you know what this is? Can you see this video? So basically that's a cookie cutter that's cutting a shape into cookie dough. Notice how that cookie cutter cuts a shape into the cookie dough. So it doesn't matter if you have a cookie cutter that's smaller than the one that's being used, right? Because the biggest cookie cutter always cuts the biggest shape, right? So that's the same with building area. So specifically, pretend you're using Google Earth. Have you ever used Google Earth? Great. Pretend you're looking at a building from the sky, as if you were a bird, and then squishing it all the way down into the ground because the ground is super soft. So for example, what would be the shape when you press down a building into the ground if the building looked like this? Okay. So obviously it's not a square from the middle shaft because there are all these parts of the building at the top that are coming out. And when you press it all the way down, right, you're going to get a shape, a building area that's kind of funky, kind of like a big plus sign, more or less, when you press it all the way down. And that's how building area works. It always includes the outermost walls on all sides, okay? No matter what the main shape of the building is. So let's try something else. Do you recognize this building? It's the CN Tower in Toronto. So what would be the building area for the CN Tower in Toronto? Well, if we take the CN Tower and we squish it all the way down, the shape is not going to match the base of the CN Tower, which is more or less like a tripod, because a portion of the this story, right, the circular story, is also going to make an indent into the ground. So that's the neat, excuse me, that's the neat thing about building area. It relates to the biggest outside shape you would get if you were to squish that building all the way into the soft ground. Make sense? Okay. That's it. We've reached the end of topic 3. I want to thank you for your time. If you haven't already, please be sure to download the course notes onto a device of your choice. Don't simply rely on being able to access them on Brightspace, because you never know when you might lose access to Brightspace. Thank you for your time, and take care.